The wind came first, hot, dry, merciless, rolling across the New Mexico flats like it meant to erase everything it touched. Dust climbed into the sky, swallowing the sun until the world turned the color of old blood. A lone rancher rode through it with his coat pulled tight, eyes narrowed, jaw set the way men's jaws get when they've seen too much and expect to see worse. He hadn't planned to stop, but then he heard the singing. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't meant to be. It was thin, broken, dragged from a throat that had cried too long and too hard. A chant in a language older than the fences, older than the trails, older than the law that pretended to rule this land. The rancher slowed his horse. 5 figures stood tied near a dry cottonwood. 5 Apache girls, wrists raw from rope, faces streaked with dust and tears that had already dried. They weren't children. They were young women hardened by hunger and war, eyes sharp with the kind of fear that doesn't scream anymore. Soldiers' tracks marked the ground, fresh. The rope knots were army neat. One of the girls lifted her head. Her eyes met his, and in that look was not seduction, but extinction. "Save me," she said in broken English, voice hoarse but steady. "Plant your seed in me, so something of us survives." The rancher didn't move. He'd buried a wife once. Buried a child, too. Small boots still by the door when the fever took him. He had sworn the land would never take anything else from him. Yet here it was, asking again. He dismounted slowly. The girls stiffened, unsure whether mercy or death had finally come. "You know what you're asking?" he said. "Yes," the girl answered. "We die either way. But this way, our blood does not end." Her name was Nita. She had been the strongest of them once. Now she shook, not from weakness but from rage held too long inside a starving body. She told him how their village burned at dawn, how the men were shot first, how the old ones were left where they fell, how the soldiers debated whether women were worth bullets. "They left us for the sun," she said. "That is slower." The rancher cut the ropes, not because of the words, because no one deserved to be erased like this. He took them to his land, 30 hard miles under a sky that didn't care who lived or died. He gave them water, food, shelter. He didn't touch them, didn't look too long. He slept with a rifle across his chest and the memory of ghosts whispering his name. But the world didn't let men choose peace for long. The soldiers came at dusk on the 4th day. They said the women were prisoners, property of the campaign. They said harboring them was treason. The rancher stood in front of his porch with a shotgun and a calm that scared even him. "She asked me to save what your war is killing," he said. "You'll have to kill me first." They did not that day, but war remembers, and so do women who refuse to vanish. By winter, the land was quiet again, but not healed. The girls worked the ranch like they'd been born to it. They learned the rhythm of cattle and weather, the cruel honesty of soil that only gives back if you bleed for it. 2 left when spring came, choosing the mountains. 1 died from a wound that never healed right. Nita stayed. She and the rancher spoke little, but when they did, it mattered. There was no romance in it, only gravity. 2 people standing at the edge of everything they'd lost, deciding whether the future deserved a chance. The soldiers returned eventually. This time they brought fire. The rancher was shot before he hit the ground. Nita dragged him into the storm cellar as bullets tore the house apart. She pressed her hands to his wound, blood soaking into the dirt like an offering. "Do not die," she whispered. "Not yet." He lived, barely. When he woke weeks later, the ranch was ashes. The girls were gone, except Nita. She sat by the window, belly just beginning to show beneath her dress, not from lust, but from choice, from defiance, from the refusal to let a people be erased quietly. "You said seed," he rasped. "You meant future." "Yes," she said, "and you gave it by standing." Outside, spring broke through burned earth. Life always does. Winter did not ask permission before it came. It arrived one night with iron teeth, locking the land in silence so deep it felt like the world had stopped breathing. Snow crusted over the burned remains of the ranch, smoothing the scars the fire had left behind, as if the earth itself wanted to forget what men had done here. But forgetting was a luxury no one living had. The rancher learned to walk again by leaning on stubbornness more than strength. Each step tore fire through his side where the bullet had passed, yet pain was familiar, almost comforting. It meant he was still here. It meant the soldiers had failed to finish what they started. Nita watched him from the doorway every morning, her hands resting on her belly as if guarding a fragile truth from a violent world. The child inside her was quiet, growing slow and steady, unaware of uniforms or gunfire or the long shadow cast by hatred. To Nita, that silence was sacred. "You should not push yourself," she said one dawn when he tried to split wood with shaking hands. "If I stop," he replied, breath tight, "I won't start again." She understood that kind of fear, the fear of stillness, the fear that if you sit too long with memory, it will swallow you whole. They rebuilt nothing grand, just a low cabin dug half into the earth, walls thick enough to hold warmth and secrets. Smoke rose from its crooked chimney, thin but defiant, a signal to the sky that something had survived. Word traveled, as it always did. First came a trader, then a preacher, then a man with a badge who asked too many careful questions. Each time the rancher stood straight, hand near his rifle, while Nita stayed in the shadows, her presence felt more than seen. "She your wife?" the man with the badge asked once. The rancher didn't answer right away. He looked at Nita, at the strength in her posture, the quiet storm in her eyes. "She's under my protection," he said finally. "That's all the law needs to know." The badge didn't like that answer. Laws rarely do. Whispering, rumors hardened into threats. The army wanted closure. The campaign needed a clean ending. No loose stories of mercy. No living proof that orders could be defied and still lead to something human. They came at dawn again. This time Nita saw the dust before the sound. She woke the rancher without panic. Panic wasted time. They had learned that already. He loaded the rifle slowly, deliberately, every movement an argument with fate. Outside, boots crunched, commands were whispered. The land held its breath. When the first shot rang out, it missed on purpose. A warning. The rancher stepped outside anyway. "I buried enough," he called into the pale light. "You want more blood? Come take it yourself." The officer who stepped forward was young, too young to carry this much death in his eyes, but there it was anyway. "You can't keep her," the officer said. "You can't keep what isn't yours." "She was never yours," the rancher replied, "and neither is the future." The standoff might have ended there, might have turned into another chapter of violence written into the dirt, if Nita had not stepped forward herself. She stood beside the rancher, snowmelt soaking the hem of her dress, one hand firm over the life she carried. "You tried to end us," she said, voice clear, carrying farther than any rifle crack. "You failed. Kill me now and you kill what will remember your names." The soldiers shifted. Men are brave in groups, cruel in orders, but memory frightens them. The officer hesitated. Then he lowered his pistol. "We were told there were 5, he said quietly. "There were," Nita answered. "Now there is more. They left. Not because they were kind, but because history has a way of turning witnesses into weapons." Summer followed, green and shameless, covering the land with proof that destruction is never final. The child was born on a night filled with thunder, the sky splitting open as if the world itself were shouting him into existence. He cried strong, loud, alive. The rancher held him with hands that had buried too much and built too little, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on his face. Nita named the boy in her language first, then in his. 2 names, 2 worlds, 1 future. Years later, travelers would pass a small grave on a hill near the cottonwood tree. The headstone would be simple. No rank, no dates worth boasting about, just a name, and beside it sometimes they would see a young man riding the fence line, dark-eyed, straight-backed, proof that not every plea for mercy disappears into the wind.